Welcome to the Team EF Coaching Cycling Performance Podcast, where we take information from the highest level of sport and make it accessible for all cyclists. I'm your host, Zack Morris, and today I'm sitting down with the head sports director from EF Pro Cycling's women's team, Carmen Small. Carmen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm really interested to sit down with you today and learn a little bit more about you and how you're seeing the project that has fallen into your lap. Maybe it hasn't fallen. Maybe you've reached out and grabbed it. But I'm excited to learn more about you and what you're seeing in the team this year and all those moving parts. But I think it'd be helpful to kick the podcast off with getting to know you just a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about who Carmen Smalls is, where you come from, and how you ended up here in this position.
Yeah, that's loaded. That's a lot. That's a big question. Who am I? Where did I come from? So I came graduating from Fort Collins University and our Colorado State University in Fort Collins with a math degree. And I was a teacher for about 7 years before I moved over into doing to racing bikes and trying to become professional. So I lived a kind of a different life prior to this. So then I fast forward, started racing domestically first, and then I came over to Europe full time in 2013, where I was racing for Specialized Lululemon, and then continued to race in Europe full time until I suffered a concussion in 2017 in Drenthe, so it was super early in the season. So you can actually say I stopped racing in 2016 since I only raced 2 races that year in 2017. But I was quite lucky that, lucky or unlucky or seeing the positive in it. After my concussion, I had a really supportive team. I was racing for Team Virtue. And they allowed me to start sports directing in the same season. So, but they definitely didn't do it like, we're going to teach you. They were like, okay, now you're going to run the team. Good luck. So okay. It was a sink or swim situation, which is good for me because I like to rise to the occasion. And then I found myself sports directing full-time, moving to Denmark. And that was my new beginning as a sports director.
So that was 2017 straight away.
Yep.
So straight out of pro cycling into a sports director role. I don't know, but I feel like those moments in your life where you're kind of just like you said, sink or swim, like you really find out what you're capable of in a lot of different scenarios and different things that you might be good at that you didn't know that you were good at. So I think it's interesting to see how you've kind of navigated from there until now, because obviously the world tour, the women's world tour has been growing a lot, especially the last 2-3 years, seen incredible growth and what was maybe not as high pressure in terms of like media and things of that nature as a position before, and being a director for a women's team is now very important position. And it's all of a sudden, right, because everybody's kind of paying attention to the Tour de Femmes and it's great. The whole sport is growing, but that growth comes with more pressure, right? Now, and as so does the world tour, kind of status, right? So it'd be really interesting to kind of get into how you're seeing the opportunity at hand here. But how did you go from, your first directing role to getting this position here with EF?
Well, if I rewind and go back to Virtue with that sink or swim, I kind of did things backwards. Like I feel like people start off, in the sport and then grow into the management and then finish off doing something in the management area and then retire from that second career, if you will. But I was doing everything that next year, like signing contracts, talking to sponsors, bringing sponsors on the team. I was the only sports director, so I was doing all of the races. So it was really, I think that it wasn't doable to continue in that way. Mm-hmm. I think I would have been burnt out for sure. The team ended up folding in 2019.
Okay.
So for sure, I was like down a path that was not sustainable, but it allowed me to learn everybody's job. And then it was a really small team. So I was also like filling water bottles and cooking for the girls and like putting water bottle cages on bikes. So in that way, I think it was really valuable because I got to know all the facets. of the
Yeah,
job.
absolutely.
And so also it gave me a lot of perspective of like moving forward, what was important to me. So how to build a team and where is that foundation coming from? Because it's not the riders. It's having a good staff around you, around the team, that solid foundation, because riders come and go all the time if the price is right. It seems like for women right now. Like you said, it's growing really fast. And when I was racing, I think my first professional, I put it in quotes, professional contract, I didn't make any money.
Right.
Like it was not paid. But we were supposed to be professional and race professionally and act professionally and represent our sponsor. So like the growth of the sport since I was in it was already rapid, never mind the last 3 years. So it was really good because it made me understand like what the priorities should be. And if you put some effort into getting to know the staff and to making them feel important and their job is just as important as your job, you can accomplish a lot.
You knew some of the other managing staff, and is that how you got the job here? Like, how did you end up with this position?
Yeah.
So, just to recap all of that for the listener, sounds like you learned a ton in that position. I find it really fascinating to hear how you were negotiating contracts and doing every role. And I truly believe that if you're like leading a company, you should know how to operate every part of it. So I have so much respect for you for learning all of those different moving parts of it. Actually, I'm the same way myself. I know all sides of the business. I just don't have the capacity to run every component of it myself, but I understand how to work everything for the most part. And I think it's important to know that to be a good leader. You got to know what it's like to be a rider, which you do, right? You got to know what the Swan year is going through, which you do, right? You got to know all the moving parts. And so it's really cool. But now you've got this role in the World Tour team. So how did this position come up?
Yeah. So, I was actually around that same time Ezra was doing her project with Park Hotel. So we often saw each other. We were often showing up to the managers' meeting. So, I knew who Ezra was and I respected her program that she was building. I mean, Park Hotel also was like Virtue where we were...
It was on the rise. It seemed like it was going really well.
And we were both kind of moving up the ranks in a similar fashion and had a lot of similarities. So, we spoke a little bit then. And then when my team folded, I had gone to a smaller team in hopes to do what you just said, just to really focus in. But through all of that, I know I don't want to manage a team.
Right.
Like, that wasn't where my heart and my passion was. I want to direct. I can really make a change in the girls. I could help coach. All of this was I found out where my passion was. So it was good that it happened. And in that, moving to a smaller team in hopes just to do more directing. And then this didn't work out how I had hoped, but I had always kept contact with Ezra. And she had started the program over at Jumbo. And so she hired me to join Jumbo with her over there.
So you're coming from Jumbo as well.
Yes.
Right.
And so
we did the full sweep, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was really, I have a lot of respect for Ezra. I think she's a very hard worker. She brings a very human component into managing, which is necessary. I think, because, we're all humans and you have to be realistic of what you're capable of. And she brings that to, like, she wants to push you and really facilitate, like, change and growth. But at the same time, she knows what it means to still be in your capacity. And I think that's really important because this job can be 24/7. Absolutely. But it doesn't need to be. And maybe it's better that it's not, so we can do a better job at the end. So I really liked the philosophy from Ezra. And then she left Jumbo. early season last year, and I basically knew right away, like, I wouldn't stay in that environment without a good leader. And that was the most important to me, is I need a good leader. And we lacked that then on Jumbo because our good leader was not there anymore.
Right.
And so she had fallen into this opportunity or sought it out. And however, it developed on her side. And she contacted me and said, yeah, I have this new project. And I get goosebumps thinking about it because I knew right away. I said, yes. You don't have to tell me, Ezra, but yes, because I
Awesome.
believe in you. I support you. I want to work with you. She will make a great project, and I want to help her and support her and be a part of that project. So
That gives me a little bit more confidence in Ezra. I am a big body language reader from afar. I grew up playing team sports. All my younger brothers are athletes. We all very jock-esque. And part of growing up in that environment is like reading everybody's body language all the time, right? You're kind of like always sorting your place out. So it's just built in my DNA. And I've had a couple of interactions with Ezra. And for me, she has a mysterious aura,
yeah.
right? Very kind, but there's something strong there as well. So she's an interesting person. I look forward to getting to know her better as the project carries on, for sure. So let's get a little bit into the team this year. Is this first days on the job for you right now? We're at the training camp here in Girona.
Absolutely. December 1st was the first day of my contract.
Okay.
It was, I have to say I'm super happy and pleasantly surprised about the landing. You never know what to expect. I mean, I know EF from the outside.
Yeah.
I don't know it personally. Like I said, I've been in Europe since 2017, basically full time. So I'm really taken away from American teams, and I don't follow so much.
Right.
And you really are busy with your own stuff. So, you get really busy in the women's peloton and in doing your job. So it's not that I'm looking at the men's. But when I did see like the documentaries, it was really interesting. I think it was the Amazon documentary, the Amazon Prime one, or was it Netflix? What is the documentary that all the teams were represented?
It was Netflix.
Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
Yes, this one.
Unchained.
This one.
Yeah.
And I watched it. I'm not a fan of cycling, actually.
Really?
No, I didn't grow up with it. I didn't know about it. I grew up as a Nordic skier, volleyball player from Durango who was kayaking. I was not on the bike. I didn't grow up watching the tour. Then when I became like a collegiate athlete, if you will, I started to understand, this is the tour, okay, there's bike racing, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I came really late to the sport. So I can't say I'm like this cycling fan. And maybe it's better because then I can be more objective in my job and I'm not like fanning out all the time. So it's not that I'm like dying to see races on my day off.
Interesting.
Yeah. I really enjoy it because, of course, I am a competitive person and I learned a lot by watching and I'm more involved now, but I can't say that like I'm a fan girl. Coming into the team, I don't know EF I just know it as an outside. I don't know internally how it's working, but on that documentary, it was very clear how teams operate because of who was speaking. And like you said about body language, you could read the body language.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, okay, Alpecin is really this way. Jumbo is really this way. EF is really this way. And what I love the most about the team is they can laugh and have fun and still win races.
Yeah. And that's a big part of our company culture. I'd say even beyond like the team, I think we have a really good company culture at EF, and it's definitely a company I'm proud to be aligned with and working with.
Yeah.
So it's cool. So some exciting names on the roster this year, some new ones, some carrying over. What's your take on the team composition? Where do you?
I think that Ezra has done a really good job building the team. It's very well-rounded. We have really strong climbers, and we have some really strong sprinters, and we have some girls in the middle who are learning, and we don't know where they're going to develop yet. So I think she's made a really well-rounded team. And I think that it's really like the sky's the limit in this case, because really we don't know, because we have a lot of strong new riders, so we don't know exactly what they're best at. So I think that we can do a lot of developing. This team is really set up that you have the tools to succeed, and how are you going to use this as a rider? So I'm curious to see how much initiative they take upon themselves, because we can only provide for them, but they need to actually do the thing. So I'm really curious to see how that will play out.
One of the things that I think is really interesting in the transition from previous iterations of the team to the team this year is that when I'm around smaller teams, especially in the women's side of things, there is a lot of instability in the environments, from leadership all the way down to the riders. And I think that the World Tour, for the most part, is that safety net. Granted, no teams are safe in pro cycling. Unfortunately, the sport kind of has that reputation, you could say, but it is that. There is no, guarantees in the sport of cycling. But for many, the World Tour on the men's side for years now has been that state of stability. As an athlete, you can really settle in, feel safe, right? Like when you feel safe and all you have to do is focus on refining your craft, building, getting stronger, being healthier, figuring out all these little things along the way, the performances really start to come together. And so I think for me, it's going to be a really interesting year just with our team. I have another question for you about the year of women's cycling in general, but for me, it's going to be really interesting to see who embraces that security and who uses the resources around them, because it is one of those environments where you will get out of it what you put in. And if you just kind of carve your own hole out and go and disappear off into the corner and not use the resources around you, you won't evolve. But if you leave no stone unturned, you will probably be a different rider at the end of the year. And so I think it'll be interesting from that perspective. So just a question on the overall evolution of women's cycling. As we discussed, the level has increased so much, even from 22 to 23, just 1 year alone. When we look at we won't get into specifics, but just the number of females riding over 5 watts per kilo on the final climbs it's like gone up, 200%. We used to have 5, now we have 20 girls in the front group, right? And it's incredible how much growth we've seen in the overall level. And so one of my theories that I had kind of mulling around in my mind is, okay, this season could be the season that like really makes or breaks a lot of riders, because there's probably going to be some riders who are on the back foot coming into this season who really pushed above and beyond their capabilities last year, maybe weren't looking at things too holistically, and are going to break this year because they're paying the debts they took on last year. And then there's the other side of it where, maybe there's a whole sea of riders out there who weren't getting the support that they needed, and they were right on the cusp of like taking things to the next level. And so there's a chance that we see even another increase in performance overall this year. What do you see? Because that's what I see from the outside looking in. What do you see, and how do you think things are going to play out overall in the women's peloton this year?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to say for this specific year because it's the year of the Olympics.
Right.
So you're going to see some strange things, like people will be peaking where you didn't think they would in a normal year because of where the Olympics are falling. Maybe some come in not as hot as they haven't been in the past, because normally you have a handful of riders that come in really in good form in the spring, but then absolutely pay the price and die later on. I mean, you see that with a lot of girls who are racing in Australia early season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just because they can't build a program that's suitable to that. So they can't take proper rest afterwards and build up again.
Right.
Because there are so many races and few girls. We think, this is part of the problem, is it's growing so rapidly. How do you field a whole team of, let's say, 15 riders that are actually able to race at the World Tour level.
Mm-hmm.
It's not possible right now. It's not enough riders who are there.
Right.
So you end up having a lot of times squads of 4 with a few development riders in there.
Right.
So it's a big balancing act, I think, with the scheduling part.
Okay.
And bringing EF back into this is that's really I was really happy to see that they weren't like, you need to do every race. It's like, let's make a schedule that makes sense for our team
Right.
this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can grow from there. It's not, overloading everybody.
Right.
Including the staff, because, we're limited. It's Daniel Fodor and myself on the staff side that are the full-time directors, and then Emma Trott coming in doing performance and a few times directing. So it's not just about the riders, it's also about the support staff that you have around.
Of course.
So I'm curious as well how it will unfold, because with the Olympics in there also, like World Championships was at a different time last year. And so now you have, nationals, you have Olympics, and then you have Europeans and then World Championships. So you have a lot of really key events on a high level spread now throughout the year. It's not possible to peak for every one of these events.
Mm-hmm.
Just not. So it will be interesting to who shows up where and what they make their priorities.
Right.
But I think that you're going to see another step in the level next year, just based on what you said about the performance side.
Mm-hmm.
It's accessible now.
Yeah.
Girls are learning about nutrition, and this is a huge piece, because I was racing, we had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
It's like, you were told something this race, we do it, and this race now it's changed, we're going to do that, because we just didn't have any education. We didn't know.
Right.
Now that's accessible. So if you want to take advantage of that, it's going to really improve your performance.
Mm-hmm.
I think the overview of having a trainer inside the team is super important, because, we now are looking out for the best for you as an athlete, and we would need to have that overview. Are you getting sick? Can we stop before we have to take 2 weeks off? Are you getting overtrained? All this is a big piece of EF performance side in a lot of the World Tour teams now. So I think there's more growth to be seen. Because of all these little small things adding up to something.
Yeah, that kind of ties in perfectly to my next question. Or it's a little bit more of a general question about athlete optimization, because for me, when I look at the women's peloton in general, I think that we see a few still standout players. And these players, you look at them and you just look at their physique and you're like, that is an absolutely optimized athlete. Super lean, super powerful, perfect, right?
Yeah.
Fully optimized. And then I've been speaking to a lot of riders, and for the most part, I'm kind of goofy, so I can be pretty unassuming, but I ask a lot of really deep questions without people knowing it. And so I've asked a lot of the riders here what their kind of protocols look like and how they're looking at preparing for different things. And I'd say I'm pretty surprised at how much room there is to improve for a lot of the athletes here. And so back to that original point you made, it's really a matter of who takes advantage of the resources. But when you look at the stars of the sport, right, what do you see the key differences being between, obviously a rider, I'll just say the name, like Lotte Kopecky, right, like dominant across all disciplines, it seems like, whether it's a mountaintop finish or a flat sprint, she can play, she can be there, she can fight, she's incredible. And there are kind of like a few riders around her that are on that level. What do you think the key differences are that separate the stars right now from the riders just a little bit below?
I think that you have to take them out, actually, because they're really the outliers. Like, in every sport, you're going to have some athletes, a few, that are really dominant in that area. And they're going to probably be dominant with whatever they're doing. Okay, you can see Lotte Kopecky is maximizing every resource she has. I mean, I would say her training is probably one of the hardest training programs that a woman is doing right now. Can she hold on? Can she recover enough to then continue down this road? We don't know. I mean, that's for her and her coach to decide. But, you know, the demi-vollering, they have two things. They're genetically gifted, of course, but they also take advantage of everything they're doing right, you know, so they're double. So that makes them probably an outlier. So it would maybe be hard to mess them up. I mean, you also have it in the men's field, the Vanderpoels, the Van Aerts, Peacock. They're the outliers, right? Everyone wants to beat them, of course. We want to beat them, but we need to beat them by being a team. We need to beat them by really coming with our A game every single time and trying something that makes them break as a team and to go away from them.
Right.
You know, and every team needs to have that mentality, not just racing for these superstars and giving them the win. We need to challenge them. But you know, EF, we can only do that with the resources that we have to maximize, to teach, to educate the girls. We have to do that, yes. And then when we get to the race, they have to be a team. They have to. It's like the most important foundation possible is like creating that I have your back. I'm going to always follow up on this.
Yeah, I agree with almost all of that. The only athlete that breaks the mold for me is, so the last 2 years in a row, I did a 2-week altitude camp with Annemiek van Vleuten. And I'd say she's the athlete that breaks all the mold. Genetically, not that talented. Mentally, unbreakable.
Exactly. And that's her superpower. I mean, I raced with Annemiek. I was teammates with Annemiek. She is, but look where she came from. It didn't happen overnight. You know how long she was in the sport to become what she became? Yeah. Also, you can work hard. You know, this is also something, but this also takes time. You know, it's really a time investment on yourself, on your what you want to hold yourself accountable and responsible for. Annemiek, she did everything herself. She said, yes. I'm going to do altitude training now. And then she did it. I'm going to push the limits. I'm going to train 7 hours. I'm not saying every rider needs to go do that, but again and again, she did what Annemiek needed to do to succeed. And I have a lot of respect for that.
So what's interesting, though, is that if you look at Annemiek, I think even in her final year there, I think she's probably in her best form maybe ever. She was really fast. Right, even in her last year. But the overall level of the peloton had kind of caught up.
Yeah.
And then I see riders like Demi and Lade super optimized. Yeah. And that was the difference, because I know Annemiek didn't do the core training. She didn't do the off-bike mobility work. She didn't do the strength training. It was just the years of hard work compiling into something that worked. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so I think we're definitely at a point right now where the athletes who are more focused on all fronts of their performance on and off bike, and like you're even saying, like mentally and being accountable to making sure that they are learning, they have the most to gain right now, because the ceiling on the sport, it's only going to get higher. Right? Like and Lada's going to get better next year. Demi's going to get better next year. Our riders are going to get better next year. Everybody's getting better next year. And so I think for me, it's going to be a super, super, super interesting year and an exciting sporting year to watch.
And I hope that they don't make the races longer and longer and longer, because that's not helpful for women.
I agree.
Cycling.
I agree.
What's exciting is that they can race full gas for 4 hours and everything can happen. And like I had said to my colleagues, like, yeah, but you can't anticipate what's going to happen at Roubaix because we have no history in that race.
Right.
And then you see what happens last year. You know, that's a perfect example. Like, good job. Race your bikes, you know, like, don't give up and keep going. Everything can happen. And then you can see the results it's a very exciting time in women's cycling for sure.
Very exciting time in Allison Jackson. It's a life as well. She says she's going for the trilogy. She wants to, so she explained it to me yesterday. There are 3 colors of stones
Okay.
that they use to build the roads in Roubaix.
Okay.
So one of them is like a tan or darker stone. She has that one. Another one is sandstone, and then another one is like a blue stone. So she wants the other two now. So
There you go.
we hope that
If
she can
you have
attain
that
those.
fire, then go for it.
All right, Carmen, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really enjoyed having you here, and it was great to hear all of what you had to say.
Thanks.
All right, guys, don't forget to leave this episode a thumbs up, a like, and support the channel in any way you can on whatever screen it is you're looking at it on. We really do appreciate the support, and those engagements do help us grow the channel and share more resources with cyclists just like you who want to learn more about the sport. Until next time, I'm Zack Morris, and thanks so much for tuning in.